Some say that freedom is forged, not given. I don't know. I think there's some value there. I think there's some valuable insight.
I would agree.
It's not just something that you're going to get. You have to work towards it. I know one of the Marine Corps' big things, one of the ad campaigns was steel forges steel.
Forged in steel, yeah.
There's a lot of parallels with metalwork, apparently, in American and Marine Corps. In our legacy.
Go figure.
Yeah, you gotta take something that's, a valuable material, and then you heat it and melt it and make it malleable, and then you can then turn it into something. And I think one of the things we do oftentimes, especially for those who are outside of the service now, is we find that the self-motivation to do that starts to wane, especially as I'm staring at 50 now. It's not so easy for steel to forge steel.
Yeah, no, I'm way beyond 50.
Well, here's an idea then. Here's one way, especially when...
How can I motivate myself?
Yeah.
Vic? What do you think?
I think one of the things we can look at is as we're trying to heat things up, especially, we're coming out of this crazy bomb cyclone thing here. We've got to heat things up a little bit. We've got to become malleable. We got to start turning ourselves into something. We're already valuable. We just need to shape it and make us worth something. And one way you can do that is you can take on the Forged in Freedom 250 challenge offered by the Marine Corps Association Foundation. And to do that, you can complete 250 miles.
Oh, yeah? How do you do the 250? Do you have to run? Because I don't like to run.
Well, you don't have to run. There's a myriad of ways. You could run if you're, that's freaking badass. Or if you're like Sergeant Major Justin LaHue, you could walk it.
Yeah.
You could bike it.
Yeah.
You could swim it. You can row it. As long as you're doing something that is physically exerting and that takes you a distance. So, you can, I would love to be able to bench 250 pounds. That would be awesome. It's not a qualifier for this. I should still do that.
Okay.
But if you want to participate, you better run, walk, bike, swim, row, in any of those combinations or one of them individually between March 3rd and July 4th.
Okay, so how do I register for this?
Okay, very great question. So if you go to mca-marines.org/MCA events, that's EVENTS, MCA events, /category/foundation-events.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. That's a mouthful. But you could also just text America's 250 to 41444.
Awesome.
That's America's 250 to 41444.
That is very cool. And how am I going to prove to people that I did this? If I do this, that's a big if. I don't know if I'm going to do. Yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. How do I prove it?
Well, give it a shot, and not only will you be forging your own steel, but you'll be able to get a keepsake of that forged steel in an exclusive commemorative coin.
Love a coin. Yeah. I love a coin. Okay.
So once you register, I think it gives you all of the sort of accountability. I mean, quite honest, I think it's an honor system. But, don't shortchange yourself. This is about, obviously the coin is amazing. But, it's about, again, steel forging steel. It's about about not just taking on something, but appreciating it and working towards it. Remember, freedom is forged, not given.
Okay. And it's
just like this coin is not given. It's got to be earned.
Okay, and it's called the Forged in Freedom 250 Challenge,
That's
right?
Right.
Okay.
In honor of America's, 250th birthday.
I love it. Sounds good.
Awesome. See you on the road. Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners. Welcome to episode 231. This week, we welcome Mike LeBlanc to the Scuttlebutt. Mike is a veteran Marine Ground Intelligence Officer who is now the co-founder of Foundation, a company that specializes in robotics. He's also the author of the book, What If Anger is the Answer?, due out in June of this year, and it touches on the transformational aspects of anger and aggression. Mike talks to us about his journey as a Marine Ground Intelligence Bubba, how he navigated transitioning out of the Marine Corps, and how the lessons and attributes he learned in the Corps have helped him succeed in a world that, on its surface, has nothing to do with the Marine Corps, especially Marine operators. Mike insists that the leadership training that he learned in the Marine Corps especially the way Marines cultivate an aggressive attitude, has made him successful. Mike is all about helping Marines, so please feel free to reach out to him. His email is in the show description. This is episode 231. Hey, Scuttlebutt listeners, thank you for joining us and your continued support. As always, I am Vic. I'm sure many of you are been upset about that, but it is what it is. This is I'm the guy, and I'm really happy to be able to spend some time with Mike LeBlanc. Mike, thank you so much for coming on and spending some time with me.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Vic. Excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be cool. We're going to be stepping into a world that I am only familiar through movies and some, sort of lowbrow sci-fi novels. But we're going to talk a bit about robotics, probably a lot of bits about robotics. But Mike was introduced to me via friend of the show, Tom Schumann. So I knew already, the answer was already yes. I'd love to have you on. But man, you are sort of like, you're a Harvard business grad. You're a former infantry and intelligence officer. You're the CEO of robotics companies. You're racking up frequent flyer miles like it's nobody's business. Man, but really, as busy as you are, and you're taking a little bit of time off to get enjoy some of the last remaining bits of winter here. But so thank you so much for taking the time to come on, man. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, I love this, Vic, and for me, like I'm just all about Marines. I'm all about veterans. So I'm always like I hire a ton of them. And I think like in the world, it's funny now because I won't like introduce myself as a Marine first and foremost. For like years you're like I'm a Marine even when you're out of uniform. But now it is like robotics are always what I'm talking about is robots. But I still very much think of myself as a Marine first, and in veteran circles, I think more than contributing anything cool with robots, I'm known as like getting a really good job out. So
that's amazing. I mean, that's so huge, especially we look at some of the bleaker statistics on veteran transitioning and reacclimatizing back into life outside of uniform. So I mean there's nothing that I can say that isn't in 100% celebration of what you're doing. But yeah, I do find that interesting too, because also a lot from what the online stalking I was doing, most of the stuff that you're focused on with robotics will have a direct impact on active duty, thus ipso facto through into veterans.
Yeah, well, and I always think like, I had such a hard time getting out of the Marines. There's some Marines that just like get out and they know. They have these like awesome job offers and they have like these, and I'm always like, where did you get that?
Yeah, what tap and tamp did you go to?
yeah. I'm like, dude, I had nothing, and nobody, and so it was so hard for me to piece all of this together that now you kind of become an expert in anything you have to do that's really hard, right? So like I'm always thinking about how to build, and helping Marines and helping veterans get out. Like that's why I'm always trying to like help hire them and develop skills and be like, all right, let's market you this way. And what do you want to do? Trying
that's
to help
awesome.
People. Right? Yeah.
Man, that's so good. Yeah. It's such that's such our wheelhouse here at Scuttlebutt too. Because same thing, like when I was forced to grow up, I didn't realize how unprepared I was until like my retirement ceremony. And I'm like, when I leave this building, I have no idea what the fuck I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome. Well, before we jump into that, let's talk a little bit or a lot of bit about what was your path to the Yellow Footprints? Like what, where did you grow up and why the Marine Corps? Were you are you a Marine brat, or were you like me, just like always running around in camouflage playing with GI Joes? Like, hey, this is just in the cards.
No, the opposite.
Oh, okay.
I was like, no military family. My grandpa went to World War II. Never talked about it. We were just not a military family in the least. I'd never shot a gun before. Just wasn't my thing. And I ended up going when I went to college. I wasn't going to go to college, and then got recommended by my senior English teacher she was like, you should go to this special school, only 100 kids per year, and you all do the same thing. It's like a philosophy program, and you all learn to translate ancient Greek. You'll read Plato and Aristotle and all these things. And for whatever, that like lit me up at 18. I was like, well, that sounds really cool. Like, I was like, that actually sounds serious. And it was funny at the time. I had like D's and F's because I would cut school all the time. I had no plans of going to college whatsoever.
This is in Ohio, is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this is in Ohio. And I was like, like now my kids are 6, 7, and 8, but they know at age 13 they're allowed to leave school because I don't believe in high school. I think that it's a failed experiment. So
yeah, I homeschool, Vince. So you're
nice. Yeah.
By we or by I or we, I mean my wife homeschools.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, I just always think if you look at like all of human history, like at age 13 and oftentimes younger than that, you were working or it was an apprenticeship. Like that was the model for like thousands.
Yeah, no, that's right.
And then like this tiny little piece here in history, we started going to high school and college, and now we are like, of course you need to go to prom, and like that's the natural development. It's like I don't think it's good. So
yeah, well, and like for every 80s movie that I watch and laugh my ass off, I'm like, that shit is so wrong. Because that's how we were. I mean, it's children. Like these are obviously adults playing kids, but that's how we were as kids. And my wife and I talk about all the time, like for every sort of asshole adult you see, it's because they were asshole teenagers and nobody told them that was not okay.
Yeah. And it was so funny to me because I would go to high school and I was so arrogant and obnoxious, didn't care about anything. And then I would go and work for my dad painting houses over the summers, and I would do it through like winter break and all these things. And there I'm reporting to like his crews that are like 30s, 40s, and those guys are serious. Like, you need to do good work, or else they're like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
So I had like this dichotomy between like me just like being total jerk and then going into these spaces where I'm like trying to do well. I'm like really proud of the skills that I'm developing. And I'm like, now I look back on it and I'm like, that is so obvious that that's what I want my kids doing. I don't want them, trying drugs and like casual sex and whatever goes on in high schools. I want them like learning skills, learning about what they're good at, and taking pride in what they're developing.
Yeah, no, that's well. It's clearly it's translated even to something that's seemingly more advanced like robotics. But I mean, I think that core sort of worldview and that character development is clearly is translated. So, all right, so why the Marine Corps then? As your
So I start going and I'm studying all the classics. I'm Plato and Aristotle and all these things. And I just got really, you kind of can't help but to get into the war texts, right? Mm-hmm. Like the Iliad and the Odyssey are the first things that you read.
For sure. My kids we were diving into the Iliad now.
That's great.
And yeah, I mean, Plato was a Athenian spearman. So, I mean, yeah.
You start learning these things and, you just start looking at yourself and going like, what am I? And what were all these men back then that were able to, write a treatise on philosophy, but would also fight in the wars.
Right.
And, and it's this like incredible thing that you're looking up to. And I'll never forget, I was reading Thucydides. So like, nerds that we were, like Thucydides is really cool to translate. If you can translate, it's like really hard. So I'm like, nerding out, like translating Thucydides, and I'm realizing these like statesmen and generals are guiding history with their decisions. And I have this moment where I'm like, people must still be doing that today. I don't know who they are, and I don't even know what history is going on. I didn't know that we were in a war. We were in Iraq at the time. And like, but I was like, I should be one of those guys. That's who I want to be. I want to have some kind of big impact like that. And that's what got me sparked on thinking the Marine Corps is the place that happens.
That's awesome. And did you dip your toes into any other services, or was it just like the Marines are the best, that's where I'm headed?
So then I went to each of the different recruiters because, like I said, I knew nothing about the military. So I go to each of them, and Army's selling me on how they can like pay for my, like everybody that I'm going to is being like, we can pay for your college and all this kind of stuff. And I had no concept of debt, right? So I'm like, What do I need that for? And I'm like, that does nothing for me. And I'm like, nobody's selling me on what I care about, which is going to war. And then I go to the Marines, and the Marines are just like, I'm like, so why the Marines over the other ones? And they're like, well, we're the best. So, if you want to be the best, that's. But they just said it all like matter of fact.
Yeah. Well, there's
I was
that.
like,
yeah.
I was like, that's the pitch, and there was no pitch. I got none of my school paid for. I got nothing, and I didn't even know you got paid, right? I didn't but that was the sell for me. Was just these guys being like, well, it's the best. Like, if you want to push yourself really hard, that's what we do, and but maybe not. And I was like, no, that's exactly what I want. So it was a match made in heaven.
Oh man, dude, that's so similar to my experiences. I kind of the same. Like I said, growing up, sort of all about the 80s and 90s action movies. Grew up playing with GI Joes and just running around all over the place. And so when I started doing my shopping, similar things. Hey, we'll get you on a Bud Seal contract, or we'll do whatever thousands of dollars towards your college and such. And then I go to the Marine OSO, and he's like, I'm actually kind of full. But if you want to reapply next year, maybe you can make it. I don't know. I'm like, maybe I can. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, of course I'm gonna make it.
Yeah. These guys, like, that was the other thing. So you had this concept, if you know nothing, that like you're gonna sign your life away. That like they're gonna put that contract in front of you, and you are gonna like sign it, and there goes your soul, and now you're like cannon fodder, right? And so I remember like my parents took me up to the OSO the first time and like saw me off like I was like going off to college, right? They're like, oh my gosh, like he's going in. And I like walk in to be like, I'm gonna sign up. Like, here I am. And they're like, okay, well, we got to put a package together. You can't sign it. There's nothing for you to sign. Like, and then even if you go, you'll probably get dropped. And I'm like, what? And I like go back out, and my parents are like, maybe it's like a recruiting trick. And I'm like, what kind of trick if I was ready to sign? Like, but it is like there's no you can't like accidentally become a Marine officer at all.
So good. So now you're in. Were you a PLC guy or OCC?
You give me a tough quiz.
Whatever the OCC one was where you graduate and then commission.
That's what I did.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Dude, I see. Nobody's gonna think that I'm a Marine. My wife is always like, "You're so messy." She's like, she didn't believe that I was in the Marine Corps for a long time. Thank God she knew Tom Schumann, because she was like, "I only believe that you're a Marine because of him." Because she's like, "You never have your stuff together. You're never ready. You don't make your bed." Like, but yeah, OCC would have been it then. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I went to so I just did like the full graduate, and then you pop in for 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And then it was in total danger of being dropped every single week, week over week. And like, I was just like, I can't believe this. Like, this is my whole plan. And like, I'm going to get dropped. Like, I'm going to I'm going to have to go figure out what to do. I'm going to be like an accountant or something. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Dude, I was so afraid of getting injured.
Oh yeah.
Because of that whole thing. Like, I'm not coming back. Like, if I don't make it this time, this is it. This is my one shot, because I'm not coming back for this, man.
Oh yeah. Well, and I did like a winter class.
Oh God.
And I went through such a deep depression while I was there, and was just like, this isn't for me. And so I had this whole idea in my mind where I was just like, I'm gonna get through this, and then I'm not going to accept my commission. Like, I've got to do it to at least like know, to say like I came here to do this. I'm going to finish what I started, but there's no way I'm becoming a Marine officer. And I would be saying that. I was saying that the whole time to my rack mates, and then finally my rack mate Jimmy Cook, the night before, he just talked me into it, just straight up.
No way.
He's like, dude, OCS is stupid. He's like, don't worry about that. It's gonna be awesome. We're gonna be lieutenants. It's gonna be so cool. And I was like, all right, like, let's
sounds
get
good.
it. Why not?
So I guess, because this was something new to me as well, was the idea of the quality thirds. But I had a year, because I did the PLC combined, so I actually came back, dropped to the IRR, but was still checking in with the OSO. So I kind of had an idea. Hey, when you go to TBS, this is how they do the jobs. This is what quality thirds looks like. Well, and for you, were you just like, Or were you always like, I'm going grunt, grunt life for me? Or like,
Yeah,
how was the TBS experience then?
worse than that. So like I didn't even know going into TBS, I didn't realize there was more than one job. And like you would think that I'd be like quicker to the uptake by this time, but I just thought everybody was infantry. I thought that was the only job that there was in the Marines. I was like, the other ones are for the other services, right? Like they feed us and they do the like I like just didn't get it. And yeah, and the quality thirds was like really hard to understand. So like so I went to TBS and I hated TBS. I think TBS was like, because OCS was really hard for me. I was like learning and not doing a good job at learning. And so it was really, really tough and all new. IOC I loved, was just like hard, and it was like, man school, and you're like, this is great. TBS was just like this blip where you're like, the only reason that anybody got dropped that I ever heard of was like cheating, and
Yeah.
everybody else
Integrity
was just like,
violator.
yeah, everybody else just kind of like moseying their way through. And yeah, so it was like this. I was like, what am I doing here? But I got really set on ground intel, where you get to be infantry and intelligence. I thought that was like the coolest MOS. When I heard about that, I was like, I can't believe that's a thing. So I was, and they had like, I think they had 6 slots for it, but I was just gunning for that the whole time. That was the dream to be able to get. And so,
Okay.
and so I was one of those guys. They're like, there are always these bad guys in every class that like I ended up being at the bottom of the top third.
Yes, me too. Dude, you
So
get your first choice, man.
So I was like really screwed. It was actually funny how it worked out. So I was like, I went into the Marines and I was very physically fit. So like I had like my 300 PFT, and that carries you a long way.
Sure.
When you've got a 300 PFT reliably, like that's why I didn't get dropped from OCS. Looking back, it was like I failed all these different things that they should have dropped me for. And then at the end, somebody's like, dude, you have a 300 PFT. They're not dropping you. They just hate you. And I was like, oh, this is great. But like I had my 300 PFT, so I did like well on that, and I came in first on like the endurance course, on the E course. So that so I had like good physical scores, and then I was like doing pretty well on the tests. I had good on that, and then my leadership score came out. So those were like the 3 pieces. And so I'm like, every time I'm like looking at myself and I'm like high up in the rankings, I'm like, this is awesome. I'm gonna get ground intel, and they give me that first leadership score, and I was number 68 out of 72 in the platoon, and it was like everybody, just nobody could stand me at TBS. And, because for very good reasons, like everybody else, was like cleaning up on like Fridays, and I was like not really doing my part, and just being like, I was like, dude, you guys should like be working and doing more pull-ups and stuff. Like you guys are crazy for doing all this stuff, and every, and so I just got like nailed in the peer evals all the time. But that was like a huge lesson to me, because then you get that's where your score comes, out of those 3 pieces. And I was all of a sudden like, oh, like if you want to be good at that, you can't just be like so good at the Marines alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a team sport. And so that was a huge lesson for me. But yeah, that had me in like the bottom of the top third. And so then I did like that thing that a bunch of other guys did, of like failing the last test, so that you drop into from the bottom of the top third to the top of the second. And so then and that unfortunately works. And so I ended up being like 6th pick or something, and got ground intel.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, or you could use my technique of just being the top of the bottom third, and then you can really just sort of ride it out, man.
Yeah, that's a good place to be.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. So you get the ground intel, and so for our listeners who aren't familiar, what is that program?
So you go to IOC to become an infantry officer. So you get primary infantry MOS. Then you go to ground intel school, and you get an 0203 is your MOS. So you're a ground intelligence officer, and then you go to scout sniper unit leaders or something like that.
Yeah.
Sniper program.
So basically, you have a ton of training.
Yeah.
You're not just like, I mean, not to say that IOC is anything to sneeze at, but you still have months and months of training to go through even after IOC.
Yeah. And so the whole first 2 years, that I was in were all like from OCS to actually like hitting the fleet was 2-year process.
Yeah.
But then like you get like certified weapons instructor, you get like scout sniper leader, you have like all these kind of MOSs, and then and then you hit the fleet and everybody's like, do you know anything? And you're like, no.
So I want to rewind just a little bit. I'm just thinking of what we were talking about. So, because I was going to ask you, what were your expectations upon hitting the fleet? Because at this point, what year are we in?
I joined 2009.
Okay, so we're looking at
2011 was hitting the fleet.
Okay, so we're looking at I guess with the second surge of Afghanistan, then would be 11. What I guess rewinding as a kid, then where do you remember much about September 11th?
Oh yeah, oh absolutely, yeah. I was in 10th grade.
Okay.
In September 11th, and yeah, so I was in high school, and I had this teacher who like had a construction company. He like ran a construction company, so he didn't like focus much on teaching. So he always had us watching movies. And so we like had a TV in the room, and he got a call from somebody who's like, "Oh man," he's like, "change the channel," and he like went to it. So we watched it all live. And then Mr. Hopkins was this great guy that was just like, he's like, all right, nobody's going to the rest of your classes. He's like, this is your education today. Like, stay here and focus on this. And so we like stayed in that class all day and watched it all. But it had for anybody, our age, just huge impact.
Yeah.
And shaped who you become in a big way.
Man, and so how was that informing you as you're going through the Marine Officer Ascension process then? Like, as you were, because, I was a 90s guy. When I was going through OCS and TBS, like the most hardcore thing you could do is probably take out a Mew and then maybe do like a Neo or, some humanity, disaster relief thing in East Timor or something, and so when 9/11 happened, it was a real wake-up call for all of us. I mean, what was it like for you then as you were going through the process?
Yeah, so I was expecting like war with a capital W, and was really thinking like, this is just, you'd been seeing for years then, the whole time I'm coming up, you're seeing like insurgents and these firefights and guys, shooting over their heads.
Yeah.
So like you have all those images that I thought that's what you join. I thought you join, everybody is in the infantry, everybody goes to combat. And I was like, of course that's what they want from me. So of course when I sign my name on this dotted line, they're gonna be like, all right, you're ready to ship off. And I pictured kind of this like video game of just me and like, and you don't realize it's like it was hard to deploy. It was really hard to deploy. And it's like it's so not guaranteed at all that you get anywhere. And so at each point I was just like, oh man, I might not be infantry, and then I'm like getting through, and then I'm like, oh man, I might not deploy. And I'm like, I might get out and like not have a good fit rep because I don't have a good billet. And then I'm going to tell everybody like, they're like, oh, you served? And I'm like, yeah, in California outside of Joshua Tree. And they're going to be like, oh, a lot of action out there, and you're like, why did I do this? You're like, this is horrible. So I was like kicking myself because I'd wish that I'd joined the reserves then, because then I heard all these reservists all got to choose to go to deployments all the time. And I was like, well, I was like, if I'd known that, I would have definitely done that so I could just deploy all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was like a harsh awakening when I got to the fleet.
And so what and I know one of the nightmare scenarios, especially for ground intel bubbas, is you end up either in a 2-shop at a non-infantry unit, or you end up being the HNS company commander at like combat engineers or something, right? Like,
yeah, that's so I thought you just don't think it's gonna happen to you. It's just one of those things. Everybody like talks about it the whole time, and you're just like, I'm not gonna have to be an intelligence officer. And of course that was my first job out. I was the intelligence officer of 311, an artillery battalion in 29 Palms. I had 6 Marines. Like you're hearing like for years, like when you get your Marines, my senior Marine was a Lance Corporal, and it's like, and I don't know, you just have this like, you're like, I can't believe this is happening to me. And and I check in, and I go to my battalion commander, and he like pulls me in, and he's just like sitting there like looking at me, and he has me like standing at the position of attention, and I'm just like, what is going
What
on
are
here?
we doing? What's happening?
You've been like going through like 2 years of training, so you're like, I'm pretty awesome, And he's just like, you think you're pretty freaking cool, don't you? And you're like, oh my gosh, what did I do to this guy? And so he just tells me in that first one, he's like, you're never gonna deploy. He's like, you're gonna miss it. You're with me. He's like, and he keeps going. I got you for 3 years, Deuce. I got you 3 years.
Good grief.
And so I'm like, what is going on, right? And so I'm like so depressed walking out of this thing. But that was where I was like, I am going to deploy. Like, I went through a brief depression. And then I was like, I'm getting in this. Like, I am gonna find my way to deploy. And so I started this kind of crazy, but now I look back on it, I'm like, it was the right thing to do. I started going to all the other two shops, and I'd go to every other intelligence officer I could meet. And I'd bring monsters, or I'd bring cigars, or I'd bring like whatever. I'd bring like gifts, I'm like the second lieutenant going to all these captains, like, here, sir, I brought you these. And they'd just be like, what? Why did you bring me that? And I'd be like, you can have that, and they'd be like, okay. But I would just go to everybody and I would tell them, like, I want to deploy. I'm ready to deploy. All I do is the weather, like no loss of value in the battalion. And I did that all the time. And I wanted to be so ready that I went to medical and I told them that I was deploying. And they were like, oh, we like don't see you coming up in any of those things. And I was like, well, there must be some kind of mistake. Like, I need to get all these shots. So I got like my anthrax, I got all the shots. I didn't rent a place. I lived on my buddy's couch, so that I was like, and I had my bags packed so that I would tell these guys, I'd be like, I'm literally ready to go. I have all my pre-deployment stuff done. Like, just call me. If there's any guy who like drops out for any reason, call me. And that process did lead to me getting my deployment.
Oh man, that's crazy. So how did that work? Who picked you up then?
So there's this great guy, Captain Flores, who he knew. He was just like, dude, this guy's like so ready to go and just doing the weather, And so he ended up coming by with the G2 one time, and they came, like, the G2 was doing like a tour of so the top intel officer, and of the division, and they were like at 29 Palms going around, and he took him to my office, and so they just like came in and they were like, so you don't do anything here, huh? And I was like, no, sir. I was like, I don't. I was like, I'll show you everything that I'm working on. It's all on the weather.
It'll take you about 5 minutes.
I'm like, I have nothing going on here. I run like the charity. I have like every second hat that you could wear. And I just tell him, and I'm like making my pitch, like, I am ready to go. Like, I'm pushing. And he's like, all right, well, we're going to find something for you. So he got me orders to Nepal for training in Nepal, that I was like, awesome. At least I'll go somewhere. And my battalion commander squashed that. He figured out how to go and fight and get me out of that, so that I didn't get to do it. But then they sent me orders to go be an advisor in Afghanistan.
Oh, okay.
And they weren't, and I had the XO was a big help to me in getting me out to that, and like helping smooth it over everything. So I got to go. Yeah.
Jeez, man. What a nightmare scenario that is.
Yeah. But it was great, because then once I went, I was so grateful to be going. And I think that's like a real gift, is just anybody who gets handed anything. It's really hard to be grateful for things that are handed to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I had that with a lot of guys that I hire. I found that if there were like Marines who had gotten out and already worked some job, and then they came to me, they would love working for me. And people that I got directly out of the Marine Corps, a lot of times they'd just be like, what is this, man? Like, I should be doing this and that. And I was, dude, I'd be like, you need to taste the real world first. So it ended up being real nice for me that, like, by the time I was going, I was like, I'm going to make the most out of this. And, didn't carry any of that like training arrogance with me of being like, I've done all this. Like, I was like, happy to be here, happy to do whatever, volunteering for everything, like, on top of it.
So you said it was an Afghan. Were you like a transition assistance, or were you what were you advising?
Yeah, so we like went and lived with the Afghans, and
Okay.
you advise on whatever their operations were. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole quote unquote war in Afghanistan, is like, what exactly is the mission here? Like it's so it is very much just like kind of going there. You're kind of like like a bad cop, in like the desert. So so it had like, but I we had like the Arena Blue attacks back then when like the Afghans
Oh
were like,
man,
attacking
yeah.
their partners. That was kind of like the big threat against you, much more than like the Taliban direct. And it was, but got to eat the goat, got to do all the things that one has
The
come
full
to expect
immersion.
from those advisory tours. Yeah.
And then so when you come back, then is that when you end up in San Clemente?
Yeah. So then,
Okay.
yeah, came back. Yeah, lived with Tom in San Clemente. I ended up getting to orders to First Recon, so getting to be a platoon commander at First
Oh,
Recon.
that's very different than being out at 11th Marines. Then.
Yes, yeah, it was stark contrast, and it was like, and actually, I mean, this is actually, so I learned this from Tom. When I came back from my tour, I went back to 311, and so I didn't realize it, but I was supposed to be there for another year, and I was like, oh man, like I'm coming back to this job, like I'm gonna have to go do this job for a year, and so I'm talking to Tom about it, and he's like, don't do that. Like, go back and tell him that you're leaving. and I'm like, but to go where? And he's like, in the Marine Corps, if you say something enough times, like it'll become true. And I was like, okay, I like that. I'm like out and Tom over here, but it was a great strategy. So when I went back, I'm like checking in at the new battalion commander. It's like new guys. And they're like, oh, so we have you for another year. And I said, no, I'm going to recon. And they were like, and I have nothing to do with recon. And then they're like, oh, I didn't realize that. Like, okay. So division like calls me frantic and is like, wait, you're going to First Recon? Like, we thought we had you slated in this other year. And I was like, no, I'm going to First Recon. They were like, okay, well, we're gonna move somebody else over there then, and he'll come replace you. So they send this poor other guy out to come replace me, fresh out of the schoolhouse. And then there are two of us there. So there are two intel officers for a battalion that doesn't need one intel officer. And so then they're like, wait, but do you have orders coming? And then I call back. So I call my monitor and I'm like, hey, they've already replaced me over here. Like, I need orders. And so she's like, what the heck do we have two? Why did they send somebody else there? So that got me out.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Yep, just navigating the Marine Corps, But sometimes, I mean, that is the way that things work in life. Like sometimes you just got to say stuff a bunch, and it does become true.
Oh man,
as you say it.
it's like Field of Dreams, man. Like you're just building it first, right?
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, now it's funny because now I have startups, and that's exactly what a startup is. Like a startup is confidently saying that you're going to be this massive company.
Yeah.
There's no reason to believe it. But slowly, like when you say that enough, it becomes true. And like, my co-founder and I set out to start this humanoid company. He had done a fintech company, like finance. I had done a robotics company. But we're just out there being like, we're going to start a humanoid company. It's going to be the biggest one in the world. And, you just say it enough that everybody's kind of like, are you? And we started hiring up a bunch of like Tesla Optimus people. And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, we've got some pretty serious engineers working here. Like, and you suddenly you just piece together this whole thing until it is like, yeah, now we've got, our most recent valuation is $4 billion. Like we have like, and we're 2 years in. It's like you end up with this big real thing that you have going. We have robots working 24 hours a day. So yeah, so those were like all early lessons of realizing that you can kind of shift reality if you put something out there confidently and just keep working toward it.
Man, that is amazing. So I guess along those lines, then, did you leave active duty as a major, or did you pick up major in the reserves?
I picked up major in the reserves.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got out as a captain.
Okay.
and yeah, that was when, I met my wife. And that was my third deployment. And then while I was there, she was like, this.
So you deployed with recon twice? Is that right?
No, so recon ended up being funny. I went to recon, and like I was there for like a month or something like that. So I never even met my platoon. I like went and was like an admin platoon commander while everybody's out on like their training, like post deployment.
Oh, geez.
And so I like checked in, and the XO's like, look, basically like the gunny's got it, go there. He's like PT, and and he's like see where everybody's at. And then they pulled me for an IA billet for individual augment. And so that was, I had this other captain, this like senior captain, like came into my office one day, and he's like, hey, just to let you know, you and I are up for this IA billet, but I set this up, so it's mine. Like they're gonna pick me, but just so you know, your name's gonna be in the rink, because he's like, because we both have anti-terror force protection level 2 training. He's like, because he's like, I put that because then I'm like the only one that they can pull, but you're there too. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. As things go, so he sets up this whole thing. Of course, they pick me instead of him to go. so then like, yeah, that was like right after I met my wife. And so I was like not looking to deploy then. I was like, this is great. Like I was like head over heels in love. And I was like, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna have my platoon. And they were like, no, you're going.
So you're both looking at each other going like, you fucked me.
Yeah, that's right. I was just like, why? I was like, why? Like, why did you do that? But yeah, so that's where I got pulled for that.
Okay.
And but then that was with a JSOTF AP, the Joint Special Operations Task Force, Arabian Peninsula. It's a tough one to remember too.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
But that was cool. So then I got to have that. But yeah, as I was there, like my wife was like, can't do this. So
yeah.
Like, if you want to get married, you really got to get out. And so that was kind of the first time that I thought about getting out, because I just assumed that I would stay in the Marine Corps. I loved it. I was like, stay here forever. So I all of a sudden had to think about this. What do you do when you get out? And and that's just a tough question for anybody that's facing it. Like,
yeah.
It's a really tough transition.
And it's really easy to ignore it too, like I did for
yeah,
at least 2 years, probably longer.
Well, and I always had this thought that like jobs would just kind of pop up in the civilian world, and I thought like, oh, you'll just get, you find something, like somebody will hire you to do something. I don't know, and I thought it would be like an easy thing. But when I got out, I had the only thing that I wanted was a job for $60,000, and what it was past that, like I did not care. As long as I was making 60 grand, I was like, all civilian jobs were the same to me. So I was like, not gonna have like an impact on anything. So I do not care what it is. Like, give me that $60,000. I'm gonna be good. And I was like, someday, I was like, by the time I retire, I'll be making 6 figures. And I was like, that was like my goal. My wife and I used to like write it out on like yellow pads, and be like, we're gonna have $100,000 a year by the time we're 60. And that was like the whole plan.
How's that working out for you, by the way?
Yeah. Now whole new world.
Yeah.
How that all works out. And I'm like, but it's just one of those that like, thank God I got turned down by every single job. I just got turned down by everybody. Nobody wanted me. And that felt like a terrible thing at the time, because I was like, I was all of a sudden like, oh man, like we want to have kids. Like I'm actually like not going to be a provider.
Yeah.
Like, how is this going to work? And I would just be driving on PCH to come home. We were like living together, and I was driving back from Pendleton, and I would just, the whole drive, I would have no music, no anything. I would just be sitting there driving, just thinking like, what the hell am I going to do? And I was just having these like, it's like, I'm not going to have any money. I'm not going to have health insurance. I'm not going to have any of this kind of stuff. Like, what am I going to do? And I think you really face that like reality of everybody's like, thank you for your service. But once you get in those interviews, it's kind of like, it stops there.
Yeah.
For me anyway. Other people.
No, I definitely can echo those sentiments for sure. It was like, what do you like? And it was different, obviously, than joining the Marine Corps because it was like, well, I'll show you. Like, no, I'll show you
Yeah.
the door. Like,
Yes.
yeah, I don't care how much you want it. Everybody wants it.
Everybody wants it.
Yeah.
And you have nothing special. I finally got, so I got one offer. I had my wife had like a friend that worked at Ingram Micro, which is like some big company. I don't really know what they do in Irvine. But they met me. They weren't really into it, but her friend like pushed them to like give me an offer. So I was going to be a project manager for 60 grand a year. And, so I'm all excited. So I go out with, Lieutenant Colonel Treglia, like my old team leader, and I go out and with my wife, and like we're all having sushi in San Clemente, and I'm all excited and stuff. And they're both like, you need to go and renegotiate your salary. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna get it, my 60,000, but like this is it. And they were like, they're not gonna think that you're good if you don't push back on salary. They're gonna think you don't know what you're doing. Like, this is civilian world. So I'm like, oh man. So I call them back the next day, and I just call this guy, and I'm like, hey, could I have 65,000 a year? And the guy right on the phone, he's just like, we didn't really think this was a good fit. I don't think this is a good idea. How about you go find somewhere else? I think you're going to find a great place. You're a great guy, but it's not going to be here. And I was like, no, I'll take 60 grand. And he's like, I'm sorry. Like it didn't feel like the right fit anyway. And he like cuts it. And I'm like standing there with the phone.
Oh my gosh.
Like my only thing that looked like it was going to come through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it falls through.
Oh.
But it's killer. I think like a lot of veterans just face that, where there was this poem, The Albatross, by Baudelaire.
Yeah.
And it's about how there's this glorious bird with this huge wingspan that's like flying over these ships, and then he lands on the ship, and now all of a sudden he like walks awkwardly because he has these huge wings, and everybody makes fun of him and like kicks him and laughs at him because he looks so silly when he's on the deck. And that poem like captured for me what it's like leaving the service, because you leave this where you're like, I'm leading Marines, I'm in the war, I'm like I'm doing like such real things. So all of a sudden everybody's just like, why is this guy so assertive? And like, so like, why is he so disagreeable? And why, like, there are all these things about you that everybody just thinks is like a mess, and they like ridicule you. And you're like, those were the things that were glorious about the Marine Corps, but like now you get laughed at and kicked for them,
Oh man, that's so profound. So is that what leads you then to Harvard?
Yeah. So that was a whole funny thing. So we went to New York when I was not getting any kind of job, and we were visiting my wife's maid of honor, and her maid of honor had come from like Kosovo, like war-torn Kosovo. It came from nothing, and now she's living in like a beautiful apartment in New York, and we're like, how did you get this? And she was like, oh, I went back to Columbia School of International and Public Affairs. And so she starts going like, that's what you should do. She's like, you shouldn't get one of those jobs. You should go to Columbia. And like, if you go to SEPA, you'll be able to get like big jobs and get, and have all these cool things. And so that she like believed in us so much and was like, that's what you should do. And she, and then all of her friends like gave me tips on how to study. And I ended up emailing the top 10 business schools, all the veterans clubs leaders. Right. And I emailed all of them and said, can I have a half hour of your time? And I would talk to each of them for half an hour and learn, what'd your application look like? What'd you write your essay on? What'd you do this on? And then at the end I'd ask, is there anybody else who will talk to me? And so, I did.
What a great idea.
Yeah, I did like well over 50 of these, and I'd sit there and I'd type on Microsoft Word everything that they said. And so it's kind of cool when you do that, because you can kind of pick up where the last one left off, because somebody tells you about like, well, it's between your GMAT, your application, your essays. And, so then you go to the next person and you say like, well, I know it's about GMAT, application, and essays. So like, how did you think about this? And so they all kind of built. And, by the end, I ended up talking to a Marine who worked at Columbia Business School admissions. And, I got connected to him, and he really opened up like how they actually do. I didn't understand. When you're a Marine getting out, you're thinking, oh, when I apply to college or I apply to grad school, I'm going against all of these civilians. Right. So how am I going to go against somebody who knows coding, and why would they want me? And like this guy was like, no, that's not the case. he's like, all of these programs say, I'm going to have this many veterans, and I'm going to have this many from private equity, this many from banking, this many from consulting, etc. And he's like, you are fighting it out with all the other military guys for those spots. You are not fighting some random like private equity guy and some random
Right.
computer coder. And that was a big break in the pace to me. Was he was like, that's his, it's like that old joke, where the bear's coming and the guy starts tying up his shoes and he's like, you really think you're gonna outrun the bear? And he's like, I don't have to outrun the bear, except to outrun you. Right? Like that's actually what you're in the position to do. And so that's what made me go like, okay, I can break through to this. Like I can figure out why they want military in general, and I can make myself look really good for that. And so that was like a huge help. And so then I ended up getting admitted to all these great schools without being particularly, smart or like outstandingly good at anything.
Yeah, good enough to read the tea leaves. Hey, Intel officer, man, it totally paid off.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, is that then where you start to get, so do you start to break the paradigm, at least within your own mind, about, sort of finding the standard template for being an adult or for adulting? Was it at Harvard where you're like, entrepreneur, startups, this is where it's at? Or was that again sort of a thing that was sort of a kind of an epiphany for you?
Yeah, that still came about over time.
Okay.
And this for me, this is like, I think that, coming from the military, I had this mindset that was like, I'm going to set a goal, I'm going to figure out what milestones reach that goal, and I'm going to do. And that can be really good when you have a short-term goal that you need to do. I think it's terrible for long-term career planning. And so like, actually, whereas you want to like push and be like aggressive and be like, I'm going to push and make this happen, you actually want to get pulled. And so like, that was my first instance of like me pushing myself to be like, I want 60 grand. I don't care if I'm a supervisor at McDonald's. Like I want that $60,000. Like very cynical view toward the civilian world. Instead, I got like pulled to going to, business school and going to like I never met anybody that went to Harvard. Like, it's not like I come from these circles.
Right.
I went to my high school to go to Harvard. But you get like pulled to it if you're like responsive to the world putting something out there for you, instead of just being like, I've got my plan, and people offer you all these opportunities and you're like, nope, not interested. I've got my plan. And I think that was like another thing that I had to learn, again, was like me going, then I was like, I'm going to go into investment banking. I'm going to go into finance. That's the plan. And ended up, getting a call from somebody that I'd interned at Morgan Stanley with. This guy had like moved to a hedge fund. He called me and was like, hey, I think you should meet these robot guys. And he's like, they've got a really, really great technology. They're really impressive engineers, but they need someone who's like a business leader to like really run the company and who like understands the security market and will get along with security guy. He's like, you are a perfect fit to like come in with these guys. And fortunately saw the opportunity there, said yes to it. And and that was my first company, Cobalt. And that's where then I got to do just like, we got up to 350 people. We had robots in 9 countries, 4 continents. Like you just learn. We raised, almost $100 million for the company. You just learn all of these things that you were like, whoever knew you got to do that?
Yeah. Dude, that's an amazing story. And for me, most of my thoughts are going into either the Terminator series or the Matrix.
Yeah.
What was it like when you were presented with that opportunity and you're like, hey, this is going to be a good fit? Was it a good fit because of you met a niche that they desperately needed, or was there something about the product also, and you could see sort of the limitless potential? Like, what was it about going into that field that helped sort of align those waypoints for you?
Yeah, I thought it was a really bad product from the beginning.
Oh, no way.
So it was robots. They're like 5-foot robots that replace security guards. And that just never made any sense to me, like whatsoever. It briefly made sense. We started to get these like big orders where we sold like 55 to Amazon and like 25 to Citibank. And like, we got like these like bigger orders, and they're all 100,000 per robot. So these are all like, $5 million, $2 million deal. And like, so there was a brief moment, like a couple months, where I was like, I guess this is a good idea, and I just don't see it. But then, but then reality set back in. So no, I never thought it was a good product. What I saw was like these guys, they're very talented engineers, and I really liked both of them. Eric and Travis were the co-founders, and I really liked them both personally. So like just getting to know them, I was like I loved how they were thinking about it. I loved, and I could just tell I'm gonna learn so much here, and they need somebody like me. That's kind of the worst thing to do is go start a career where you're not needed. And to just be like some et cetera person, and you're like always looking for something to do. This was one where I was like, these guys really need somebody just like me. They need somebody who can go and talk to, like, these were not guys that were going to get along with, security guards,
Right,
like the third shift corporate security guards, right? But I was like, I can, like, that's my world, and so I saw that and I felt like, okay, I'm a puzzle piece that fits this puzzle, and so I really loved that.
That's awesome. Was there a lot? I mean, obviously the security aspect of it sort of speaks for itself, but was there something about going into business, I guess, in general, but in this, I mean, here at the Gazette, we talk so much about emerging technologies, the changing nature of war, robotics and AI at the forefront of that innovation, explosion. What was it about? And we also joked a little bit about you being an intel officer able to read the tea leaves. Like, what was it about being a Marine that helped you sort of navigate this and be able to see that, to be able to understand what it was that you were bringing to the team and why it was essential?
I think that, like, as a Marine, everybody has this where you come back and everybody's like, you're so different, right? Like that is, I mean, it's just a common trope that anybody that comes back from boot camp, that comes back from a deployment, that comes back anywhere to their hometown, everybody's just like, you're so different. How? Like, I don't know, but you're just different. And so I have a book coming out this June called "What If Anger's the Answer."
Yeah, which I definitely want to talk to you about. Is that
this is kind of the idea behind the book, is like, what is that?
Yeah,
that everybody's saying, like, you're so different. Like, what has been developed? What's been educated? What's been changed? And I really think, like, the ancient Greeks had really hit on this. It's a certain sort of edge and assertiveness that you get. It's the ability to disagree with things. It's the ability to stand up for things. The Greeks had a word for it, thumos, and we don't have a good word for it. But that's what I think got really developed. And so for me, when I was looking at Silicon Valley, I was seeing that just wasn't there, right? Like these were people that wanted, like, nap pods in the office and, like, kombucha on tap, and they want, like, consensus about everything. So, like, my first day at Cobalt, like, I'm there and I'm, like, meeting the team and everything, and we've got no robots. Nobody wants to buy a robot. And so we have all this, we have this, like, big problem. We're, like, making these robots and like nothing coming through. And I'm like sitting in this meeting and I make a promise to myself, like the standard commander thing, where, like, I'm not going to say anything for 30 days,
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting in literally my first meeting, and they're all going, the big problem that the board's given me, that, like, everybody is like, we need to sell robots. And I'm sitting there and they're going, so Slack wants to buy a robot for their office in Denver, but they're like, obviously it's in Denver. We're in San Francisco. We can't do that. And they're like, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Like, we can't start going out. And they're like, I don't even think we'd have a robot ready. I don't think we could make a robot that could do it. And so they make a decision on the spot. They're like, so we'll call Slack and we'll just tell them we can't do it. So I'm, like, sitting there and I go, stop. And everybody's just like, oh my gosh, the new guys, right? Like, and everybody already hates me because they're like, oh great, I have, like, this Marine MBA. Like, how obnoxious, like, he's not cool like us. He's not wearing a t-shirt. And, and I'm just like, stop. And so everybody's just, like, silent. And I'm like, Slack wants a robot. Biggest problem in the company is that nobody wants a robot. We need to get Slack a robot. And so they, like, sit there and they, like, explain, but they're like, here's what you don't understand is, like, this and that. And, and I'm just like, well, okay, how long will it take you to get a robot off the manufacturing line? They're like, 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, how long, this and that. And then I'm like, all right, in 1 week, we're going to be ready to deploy. I want to be introduced to Slack right now. We're going to have them a robot in Denver in 1 week. And, so everybody's just like, I have scheduled, by the time I leave that meeting, they all schedule, it was like company culture to like put feedback sessions for anybody that you disagreed with. My calendar was filled back to back with feedback sessions of people that just wanted to tell me how much they hated me. And, but I was just like, but that to me, that's got nothing to do with Harvard. That is 100% what the military teaches, is like, it's scary to be in a room with a bunch of people who are smarter than you, who are all saying the emperor's wearing clothes. It's very hard to be that person that says no, but that gets very developed in you as a Marine.
Yeah.
I know how this one plays out. I am not a consensus guy. I'm not a go with the flow guy. Like, leadership is sometimes doing that. And that happened to come about in the first meeting that I was there. Because then one of the reasons that we couldn't do it was they were like, there's nobody who's capable of talking to like the C-suite of a company like Slack and handling all of the logistics of getting a robot there and getting the robot set up. And we don't have money to send a whole team. And there's no one person that could do all of that. And, to me, I'm like, I feel like I know like 50 guys who could do that. So I call my buddy, Eddie Fuentes, who I knew through all my training and everything. He was my first phone call, and he was planning on going to law school. I think he'd like gotten into like Columbia Law School or something. And I like talked to him on the phone. And I'm like, what are you gonna be, like a 35-year-old first year associate? Like, it makes no sense. I was like, come work for me and like come do this. And Eddie, love Eddie. I still work with him today. And he's just like, all right, I'm in. So he comes, and sure enough, we have somebody who can handle all of the logistics, who learns how to set up the robot, and who can talk to like the C-suite of this place. Like, and that was like our first display of being like, we can do this. So it was just like, to me, that is what military skills are about, is like that edge, that assertiveness, that leadership.
Yeah.
It's not that I was like a particularly special Marine. I wasn't. But everybody learns those.
Yeah. You can't. You don't go through a single bub without learning that. Like, I better say something, or else the coffee better be fucking awesome. Because like,
and that's the thing. Like, that's what I think made it so hard for people to hire me when I was coming out, is they can see that you're that kind of guy.
Yeah.
They're like, they read it all over you, that they're like, this guy's gonna disagree and like insist on things making sense to, like, no, you're not the boss here. We need somebody who just kind of does their little point.
Man, I actually never really thought about it. I always thought that would be something, and it's kind of like you said, like with the albatross, like I always thought that'd be something that people would want.
And that's, I mean, it was funny for me. Like, I was first going, I was going to work at Morgan Stanley, and that was the only place I applied to when I was at Harvard. And I learned they gave you like these 400 banking questions. So I learned all of them. I go to the interview, they start quizzing me on them. They're like, okay, so what, the 400 questions? And I was like, yep, any of them. And he's like, well, I'm not going to sit here and quiz you on things you already know. And so he's like, I'm going to quiz you. He's like, do you know what an LBO is? And I'm like, no. And he's like, okay, I'll quiz you on LBOs then. So I'm like, so he like stops the interview like 20 minutes in to go, all right, you're obviously not a fit. Like, and this, and at this time, I'm like a little bit older, going to HBS. So I was probably like 33 or something. This guy's, first year associate. He's like 26, and he hates everything to do with me, because I seem like I'm going to come in there and disagree with him. I seem like I'm going to like want to do things my own way. And he's like, you're not as smart as I am. So like, you're out. And my wife, I have to go back hat in hand and go tell my wife, like, babe, I only went for one company, which is, nobody else does. And I was like, and they turned me down like on the spot. I didn't even get my full interview. Like, they turned me down in the middle. And she's like, screw that. You don't need to be talking to some first year associate. She's like, you need to be talking to like the decision makers. Like, they'll understand what you are. And so we go to all of my friends who had been at Morgan Stanley, and they give me introductions to their bosses. And I get to go and for a whole day meet all of these executive director, managing directors, and they all are like, "You're exactly what we want a Marine leader." And they're like, the associate like already hated me because I only applied to Morgan Stanley. He like said right at the beginning of the interview, he was like, "Well, that was really stupid for you to do." He's like, "I applied to all top 10 banks. because he's like, your chances are very low of getting one. I'm like, geez, I thought they'd like loyalty. All the managing directors were like, how cool is that? You only wanted to do Morgan Stanley. Like, that's amazing. And, so they ended up on the spot quizzing me on the 400 questions, and then they created an internship for me there.
Oh man.
But that's the thing is like I think being a veteran, you just don't look right to the kind of people who are going to be hiring you.
Yeah.
And I tell that to my kids all the time where I'm like, I couldn't get a job, so I had to make a job. Like,
yeah.
But that's because like you just don't, leaders don't fit in all over the place. Like
yeah, no, that's such a good point. I mean, it is one of those things that like obviously discernment is key, but if you're running into a lot of obstacles or that things are kind of abrasive, like maybe this is the time to push through them. Like,
yeah,
because there's a reason why you're not like this doesn't seem like an easy fit.
Yeah. And that's where like I just think entrepreneurship makes sense for so many veterans.
Yeah.
And they people have a hard time doing it because they're always like, well, I don't have an idea. If I had an idea, I would do it. I've got my buddy Scott Williams. He's about to take over as battalion commander of 1st Recon this summer. But he's like the water walker guy that in the Marines. Like he's like so good. But like he and we deployed together, and we used to just always talk about what we would do in civilian life. And he was always just like, I'd buy like a pencil company. And he's like, I'll make the best damn pencils out of anybody. He's like, I'm sure that like the whole industry has like, doesn't really care about optimizing their operations. They're probably like family run businesses. And he's like, I will just go and make the world's greatest pencil at the greatest price. And like, I will sell that to anybody that needs a pencil. And I love that. I always thought that is the right mentality, is like everything you look at has been sold. Right? Like looking at a computer, the computer was sold to you. Everything that you look at has been sold to somebody by somebody. So it's like, you can just do any of it. Go make cabinets, go make whatever, get in it, start it, and just start working it harder and start doing what makes sense. And like, you'll come out on top. You really will. There are a lot of like sleepy industries. Half of these family businesses, you'll talk to people that have been running their business for like 50 years. And, because I looked at like buying a bunch of companies like that. They'll all tell you, they'll be like, oh, well, if you buy this, here's the first thing to do. Here's the second thing. Here's the third thing. Like, they know what would make their business better, but they're like, I've got a nice life. This isn't my main thing. I like to go hunting. I like to, but they know exactly what they would do. They'll tell you. Yeah. So like, you really can jump into businesses. It's not, I don't know, it's not this like Adam Smith market efficiency that everybody thinks, where it's like, it's already optimized. Everybody's already the best at it in the world. Yeah. It's like, no, you can really go compete anywhere.
Well, and I'm sure, with you being an Intel guy and sort of floating around different, not only units, but different communities. I was just joking on a previous episode with the retired Master Gunnery Sergeant. The two things that Marines hate the most is the way things are and change, right? And so, a lot of times it is that. It's like the things are working the way they are because that's just how they always worked. And I just don't want to dive in. Like you said, I can identify all the things, but who the hell's got the time? This is working. Yeah. Let's just stick with it.
Yep. And that's, I work with big companies, General Motors and DoorDash and Robinhood, and like, I've worked with all kinds of big companies. There's none that you walk into where the people aren't like, everything's screwed up here. It should be this way. We do need something that does this, but we don't. We spend way too much money on this. It's really stupid of us. Like, it is everywhere. And it's because they just don't have time to optimize all those things. Yeah. But like, so that's where now when I look back, I did think about starting like a cigar company. I like cigars. I started about thinking about starting a whiskey company. I like whiskey. But it really is like, come up with what you like, figure out some way to break into it, maybe go work at one of the places to like learn how it actually goes first, and then start it. And if it's expensive to start, there's somebody that will believe in you, right? Especially if you're like, if you went and worked for like Glenn Morangi for a little bit, or wherever, and then they'll be like, yeah, all right, like this guy, he worked at Johnny Walker for a year, and now he's got like this way that he thinks there's like a new Southern California luxury whiskey that could be produced. Like, that sounds kind of cool. Like, you can find those things. Pick something that you want to spend all your time with.
Oh man, that's really great. Well, Mike, dude, I really appreciate all this time. I could seriously talk to you for like another hour easy, but I do want to dive a little bit more into your book because I find it so fascinating. The title alone, I think is really provocative. But then now getting to know you more, I'm like, what the hell do you know about anger? you're, you're laughing constantly. Like I would say by just knowing you, like the anger would not be the answer. Like you're. But so what is it that, like, especially from a translation standpoint, like you mentioned a little bit about like the Greek word for this. You talked to what was sort of the genesis of the book? What are you getting at with the book? And are we talking about the same kind of anger that we talk about in American English?
Yeah, so I think like, the Iliad starts with the word rage, right? Like the whole Western civilization is built on like this rage, wrath, anger. And we've lost that over time. And like now, so in America, I don't know, we have this kind of like neutered version of what it is to be a man. We have this kind of flattened version of what we think that life is. And I think that the Marine Corps is great at breaking out of that. And so like the anger this was like a big mystery to me when I was reading the Greeks, is Aristotle says that shame is almost a virtue. He says you can't call it a virtue because you're obviously ashamed of something and like all virtues need to be good. But he's like, but otherwise shame's pretty good. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. And he said that anger was a virtue. He said that like you should get angry at something. Like if a bear comes and mauls your family, you shouldn't like sit back and be like, the food chain's working. Like that poor hungry bear is like eating. Like you're supposed to be angry. And so Aristotle's like, you're supposed to know when to get angry, what you're supposed to be angry with, and to the right degree for the right amount of time. Like that's the challenge of like getting angry. And that was all a really interesting thing to me, because I think I did fall on that side of like not getting angry at enough. And then Socrates in the Republic takes it even one step further, where he says that the soul is broken into three parts. It's a really famous part of the Republic. And he says the soul is made up of three parts. You have your mind, your rational part, and that he represents with like a little man. You have your appetites, all of wanting to, eat chocolate and drink alcohol and everything. And he represents that with a hydra, like a many-headed beast, right? Like a monster that every time you cut off one head, two grow back in its place. But the third part is anger, and he represents it with a lion. And so it was this bizarre thing to me that I was like, we all know like the angel and the devil on your shoulder. He kind of has those. The mind is the angel and the appetites are the devil. And we all know that when you're like out and, the mind is like, I should probably turn in tonight. And the devil's like, dude, it's Vegas, baby.
It's just
like,
starting. Night just starting.
Yeah, the night just began. And like, we all know that experience of like debating that with ourselves. But there's this third part that he says is anger. And he represents it with like a lion, with like a noble creature and stuff. So that was like this big mystery to me. And I had actually this one night, I was finishing, I just finished IOC. So infantry officer course is like, really tough. You have like fex during that where you like don't eat and sleep. And it's just like rough. You're like, in Socrates' terms, you're suppressing that hydra the whole time. Like your appetite's getting nothing, right? And you have to like push yourself through. So when I finish, it's the night before I'm beginning ground intel course in Virginia Beach, which is like a gentleman's course, right? And so I buy every known candy and fast food known to man, right? And I've got like my Baconators there. I've got like my Subway. I've got like this whole like nasty like scene from Heavyweights like playing before me, and I'm just like, it's time. Like the Hydra can go nuts, and so I'm like sitting there and I am just eating through all of this stuff, and I'm like making myself sick, and my mind is kind of like, that's okay, we've been putting it off, like you can do it, and Hydra's just blasting through this stuff. But I keep doing it, and I'm making myself so sick. And I pick up peanut butter. I love peanut butter. So I just start going at this thing with a spoon. And I'm doing the whole debate that you do where I'm like eating it, and then I like the mind like closes it, puts it to the side, and I'm like, I'm done. And then like a few minutes later, I'm like, pop that
have one
open.
more.
Like, yeah. and I'm back in it. I eat this massive Costco size of Skippy peanut butter. I eat just this entire thing. And at this point, I'm like feeling just like fat. I'm like an infantry officer. I went from being like so proud of myself to being like, I'm this disgusting worm. Like I hate myself. But that was where this like anger at myself came in. And so like just as I'm like turning to the ice cream and like still gonna eat, I flush a whole gallon of ice cream down the toilet because I'm just like, can't even be around it, can't trust myself. Flush it down the hotel toilet. And I'm like, get my shoes on. I'm like, get shoes on right now. And I'm doing a 10-mile run. And this is in the middle of the night. And I force myself. It's like a forced march, 5 miles out, 5 miles back. And so I get back around like 2 a.m. and I am like so sick. I'm like wanting to throw up. And I've got class starting in 4 hours. So like I show up the next morning puffy and like sick to my stomach. And everybody's just like, oh my gosh, man, you must have had a hell of a night in Virginia Beach. Like they're all picturing it's like spring break or something.
It's a
and
rager.
I'm like out there like having a blast. It's like I was like shame eating peanut butter and then like forced myself to run 10 miles. Like it's just like this ridiculous scene. But that like solidified for me like what that part is and like why shame is a virtue. And so that's very much like the book is about that part of us that Marines are really good at developing and using it to like shape themselves and sculpt themselves instead of like other people. You know, I think a lot of civilians just like feel that shame and then they just keep doing their job, don't really do much with it. And then they're like, oh, we all have imposter syndrome, right? And it's like, I'm like, no, that's because you're an imposter. Like, I do not have imposter syndrome. Like, I've worked hard to get all the things that I get, and like, and I know what I'm doing because they were hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's fascinating. Yeah, as someone who suffers from imposter syndrome, I need to check out your book, man. So what is it? I guess the final question I have, and again, I'm so sorry for taking you away from your family on this one, but I can't wait for this book to come out. I really want to check it out. But like, there are so many sort of negative connotations, especially in the current zeitgeist, with terms like aggression, with terms like anger, with terms like assertiveness, if you will. And it's not to deny there isn't a level of toxicity there. I mean, I think like with anything, is we take something that actually has some truth to it, and then we inflate it to the point where it's just, it's a waste of breath to say things like toxicity, which is something we need to be careful of. And so what is it in your book that you're interrogating those sort of levels or the, or should we all be, Spinal Tap and just cranking it up to 11 all the time?
Well, that's the main thing is I think that it needs to be shaped.
Okay.
So like you actually have to look at like what role should restraint play in things.
Okay.
But like what times is it worth saying something? And I always think like aggression is so funny because I would have all the time I'd be hiring all these Marines and somebody would come to me because they'd be introducing their buddy and they'd be like, he's really aggressive, and I'd be like, hell yeah, like let's get him in here. But then I always thought like, if like somebody's like coming to pick up my daughter as a date and they're like, oh, he's a great guy, Dad, he's really aggressive, I'd be like, get my shotgun.
Yeah, that's right.
Like it's a funny word because it does go back and forth with different contexts. But that's
you're not encouraging people like at the beginning of the interview to put a mouthpiece in.
Yeah. But like that's what we really learn. I think through the Marines, you really learn how to develop this edge where it is like you need to know how to do that. And even kind of naming it does a lot to start thinking about what that part is and to start thinking like, where am I using that to sculpt myself and my organization versus just being like the negative, like obnoxious, correcting everybody on everything. Because that's always the danger that you fall into. But it's dose makes the poison, right? Like you've got to figure out how to actually shape this. And so that's how my book really goes through. Because I think a lot of Marines come out and become very cynical because you do get this thing where it's like, dude, everybody's like doing all this nonsense. None of it means anything. None of it adds up to anything. And so they just kind of
everybody keeps telling me I'm weird.
Yeah. And they're just like, screw it, like kind of keep my head down, say some snarky comments here and there. And so the book is really about how to break out of that and say, no, the world is like that, but there are things to be done in that world. And that's what I think that like I started with a very cynical lens of I'll work anywhere for 60 grand.
Yeah.
That's like a very bad career plan. But I've gotten like pulled into this, into this really rich, interesting life that I now have like I have my 3 kids, and my 3 kids are like really cool. I have, got all my employees. I get to work in really, exciting technology sector. I get to, I'm back and forth from Singapore and Ukraine all the time. Like life can be really cool. So, that's the whole final chapter is called Building in a Broken World.
Yeah.
But that's the idea, is like, how do you get through that cynical version, still keep that edge, and use it to build?
Man, that's so good. The book is out June 16th. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Man, I can't wait to get my hands on it. But Mike, dude, thank you so much. I feel like there's a ton of things I still want to talk to you about we didn't get to. So I'm going to get you back on the show sometime. Maybe when the book releases, we could sort of do a rehash and talk about the book a little more in detail once I'm able to get my hands on it. But man, thank you so much for taking the time. I had a great time talking to you.
Me too, man.
And
Thanks so much.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, check out the book, What If Anger is the Answer? And I really do appreciate, a lot of times, especially when we're talking post Marine Corps career things, that very rarely do we take all of our experiences in their totality to sort of help and to shape things and to form a narrative. And so I really appreciate, what you've done, what you're doing. Keep up the good work, man. I can't wait to talk to you again.
And just last thing, Vic, my email is mike@foundation.bot. So anybody that's listening to this, I love Marines. I love helping Marines. So anybody that wants to reach out to me, mike@foundation.bot. I'm always happy to help, because like, anybody that's listened to this point of the podcast knows, like, it's been a rough go of like finding all these things. But like I'm always happy to help any Marine that I can to
Oh
do
man.
this. So,
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And we'll share that in the show description as well for people to check out. So thanks again, Mike. Take it easy, man.
thanks so much, Vic.
Scuttlebutt is a production of the Marine Corps Association. You have heard the voices or contributions from Major Vic Rubel, USMC retired, Nancy Litchman, William Truding, and our guest. Ty Frazier is the editor, sound engineer, and technical producer. The Marine Corps Association is not an agency of the U.S. government. The opinions expressed in this episode are the personal views of the participants and do not reflect the official position of the United States Marine Corps, the Department of Defense, or the Marine Corps Association.